even though there are people who try to downplay what we call the down low brother and his impact on the black community and women in particular, the fact remains that this does happen, and that these men who don't want to admit to being gay will continue to have relationships and sexual interactions with women who believe that the guys are heterosexual. So we have a dilemma though in the black community where the HIV rate is disproportionately impacting us. When you consider the small percentage of the total US population that we are, it's hitting us far too hard. Some say between half to two-thirds of the new HIV cases are black people. Particularly, we're looking at when women are diagnosed, black women are 66 to 70% of those being diagnosed. Where are all these heterosexual women getting HIV from? You have to look at what's going on in the black community. There's no denying that the incarceration rate for black males is ridiculous. I mean, nationwide, we have the highest incarceration rate in the world. And with more than 7 million people in the correctional system, more than 2 million of them, they're estimated, are black. You know, that's a lot of men off the street and away from loving relationships with their wives and girlfriends, away from their children, away from their families, and they're in an environment that is not conducive to kind and gentle behavior. It's also going to be an environment that's very sexually frustrating because there's no women, unless a guy's married and he's in a kind of prison where they allow conjugal visits, which are also very expensive and possibly prohibitive in cost for his family. They're not going to have any sexual outlet. And if you look at the slides I'm putting up here, it's like black men are in prison at 6 times the rate of white men. How is that possible? When as a total, we're only 13% of the population, and black men are half of that. So, what's going on? The bottom line is, with all these men being locked up, it changes a lot of the dynamics in black male-female relationships. For one thing, the young guys who are the prime ones, at that prime age between 25 and say 50, are the prime age for wage earners, for husbands, and to be fathers. But a large percentage of them are missing because they're behind bars or they're dead. They got involved in some mess and they're dead now. And the others, they're cycling in and out of prison. So they can't really be counted on to be a functional part of the black community because they're not there. And then on this slide, it shows that the black males are 6 times greater than white, which we said, but 2.5 times greater than Latino guys, which is the number 2 high rate of people of color in prison. So between the two, we have a problem here for women black and brown women. They have a real problem with their men being gone. When these guys come back is when the problem starts. Because while they're locked up behind bars, surely you don't think they're having some kind of sexual outlet. My thing is whether it's by force or whether it's by coercion because he's afraid what'll happen if he doesn't, comply to these demands. Most of these guys are going to have some kind of sexual interaction with another man while they're in prison. If the guy's there for 5, 10, 20 years, you can bet that that's what's going to happen. So I don't really understand why black women are not, they're just not getting it. They're not doing what they need to do to protect themselves. They're not making these guys get HIV tests. I mean, what I was reading is like only 7 or 8 or 10 or something like that prisons even require it. And there's been some some upheaval by the ACLU that AIDS testing is a violation of these prisoners' rights. I don't think so, because I don't think, if the Constitution says you can't even, you're not even considered a man anymore, you don't have any rights once you become a convict, then how in the world do you suddenly have a right to spread a disease around that could be fatal? You can't get tested for that. No one says that the results have to be released to the public, but I think mandatory HIV testing, hepatitis shots, and a bunch of other things should be mandatory, because that way the other prisoners are protected from these people and their deadly diseases. So I this is a really, really frightening thing. I remember when all this started being talked about way back in the 90s. People were trying to figure out, what's going on. Why is it that so many heterosexual black women are coming down with AIDS? And people couldn't really figure it out, because when you look at the sexual behaviors of black women, we're no more out there than the white girls. Because the white girls, I'm telling you, they was tossing up everything in college. And the black girls, a lot of them would go through the whole 4 years with no date at all. So, the things that people say, black women are so freaky, black women are so this and so wild and all this stuff, I haven't seen any evidence of that. What I see is a lot of people who really want to be married. They want to have one man, and they want to be with that one man, and whether it's their religion or whatever, that tends to be what the model that for black women that they want to follow. Of course, there's some that don't. I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying, in a large percentage of black women really have no interest in being promiscuous and, jumping around, bed hopping, and doing all that. So that was not the source of the transmission rate for HIV. So then they started looking at, okay, well, who has it? It turns out that the number one people who have it, goodness gracious, the number one people who have it are gay males, right? Men having sex with men. So if you have a man, though, and he's incarcerated, what's the likelihood of him coming down with HIV? Well, they say in the prevalence in incarcerated men and women is 3 to 5 times that of the general population. To me, that translates into it being a very high probability that if your man was locked up for a couple of years, he's going to come out with something that you need to worry about. And HIV is at this point the number one concern. Heart disease is a killer, cancer is a killer, and then HIV for black women. It's way up there. So this is something that you guys need to pay attention to. When these guys get out, what happens? What do they go and get tested then? Do they go and get treatment if they already know that they have it? Have you ever asked these questions of a man that went to prison? Do you care? Let's start there, because I think having these guys around, once they get out, they're back in the community and their stock goes up. Even if they're a nothing ass man, the fact that he's single, apparently he looks healthy. I mean, he's not like ravaged by HIV yet, and comes into this community where there's single, lonely women. He's gonna have a lot of options that he didn't have while he was locked up, and possibly even before that. The black community has far fewer men. In some areas, there's like 66 to 80 women for every 100. Wait, what am I saying? 66 to 80 men for every 100 women. There you go. So that makes, a lot of demand for these guys who the women are going to not have the standards as high as they might, because the competition for male attention is so fierce. They want to have a man. So there's like all these women doing this man sharing thing, and dudes feel no compunction to settle down and be committed. Why? There's just so much pussy just flying around, just, women just throwing themselves at them. But, we're looking at what I call the deviant behavior that men start to get into once they're locked up like animals. And this one dude was like, well, in prison, the bottom line is either you the rapist or you the rape victim. And that's how you establish yourself as power and, as a person of power, somebody to be feared, so nobody will mess with you. Or you have to be like in the Muslims or, some gang or something like that. But if you just come to prison and you don't know anybody, you're young, you're small, you don't know the ropes about being in prison, chances are you're going to end up being somebody's, kid. You're going to be the one that, that does his sexual favors and keeps him happy. That happens a lot. A lot of guys were saying, well, it's like they either force you into it, where a bunch of dudes will just grab you and throw you down and hold you down while somebody, the fourth dude rapes you, or they will tell you what'll happen if you don't do it, and you get so scared that you comply, or you say no and they beat your ass and they beat your ass and they beat your ass until they either take it anyway or you give in because you're tired of getting your ass beat. So those are the three ways that the guys usually find themselves in that kind of situation. And with black women getting HIV at 20 times the rate of white women, we have to look at the impact of our men's behavior. And I don't know how anybody can say that it isn't related to the high numbers of black men in prison. There's no way in this world you can't even see that. I mean, with the HIV being so prevalent in prison, these men get out. What do they do then? They go back to women and they spread it to the women who were their girlfriends or some woman that they met while they was in prison, who thinks she gonna have a relationship now. I talked about that in the first video. And so the women, who have never cheated or anything, suddenly come down with this dreadful disease and they're trying to figure out what happened. As you see here, it's like, according to the data from the CDC, most of the black women who get it, HIV, 60% get it from their boyfriends, their husbands, their baby daddy, whoever, who either doesn't know that he has HIV or he's lying to them about his sexual behavior and his, his male dibbling and dabbling. And, that's very sad. You look at, black women are trusting these men that they love, and they're trusting these guys to say that they love them. They want to have children and that, so they're having unprotected sex. I'm not sure what the solution is going to be, ladies, because, the options to me are rather severe. Is that, if you do a background check and you find out a man has been in prison, you don't fuck with him. But isn't that going to be like the majority of black males at some point? And one of these slides in here, it says, 1 out of 3 black men, 1 out of 2, something like that, should expect to have some kind of detention behind bars in his lifetime. That is frightening. That's like a whole 50% of the black male population will have gone through the criminal justice system at some point in his life. So it's like, what options then are there for women? I mean, somebody is going to have to date, a guy who has a history of being in prison. Now, does everybody who goes to prison come out with HIV? No. But are you willing to gamble? I mean, should you not get your man tested before you do anything with him, and then get him tested? He should be tested as soon as he comes out, and he should be tested 3 months or so later to make sure, and then you have to keep testing and you have to keep using protection because you don't know what he's doing. Personally, I think a lot of this new fixation that black males seem to have on doing anal sex, straight from prison. That's what they like. That's what they got used to all them years they was locked up. Now they come out and they want to do it to you. And they say, they try to claim that they're not gay. But my thing is, if you having sex, you having an orgasm, and you're doing it with another man, you're gay. I don't care how you try to dress it up and pretend that it's something else, and who is on the bottom is the gay one and the other one is not, and all these other little mental conniptions that they go through to try to deny that they're, sexually attracted to men is just a joke. It's a joke. And, a lot of the women are like, well, I like the anal sex. And I did a whole video, did a whole thing to talk about that. So you can find that on the channel in the series I did in September. that stuff will kill you. That will wreck your body. You don't need to have anal sex ever, and that that's a passageway for excreting waste. Is not for sex. And guys, do that because they don't have a vagina to put something in. So you ladies need to be real careful and really think about what this guy's history is that's asking you to stick something up your ass. Because chances are, if he's been in jail, that's where he learned how to do it. That's where he likes it. That's how he likes it, and it's not gonna be too much that you can do with him because he, likes sex with dudes. There, the slide I just went through just shows 5 risk factors. Um, for HIV, which includes tattooing, which, dirty needles, because they don't have any way to sterilize this stuff, and everybody want to get them prison tattoos. They're using drugs, so they're sharing their needles and the kits to inject the heroin or whatever it is that they have, as well as sex. So it's not being transmitted just one way. Oh, also, and fights, bloody fights. I mean, once the blood is spilled, you touch it, and you touch some orifice on your body, your nose, it gets in your nose, your eyes, or your mouth, or whatever. That can be a transmission vehicle as well. So, the prison is just a very, very dangerous place. A lot of risks for the prisoner's health and safety. And once they get out, there's risks for you as well. Now, since we talked about the high numbers of Black and Latino men in prison, and since Black and Latino women tend to prefer only to have sex with Black and Latino men, these communities face a greater risk of HIV infection because the men, they're being recycled through the community. They go from woman to woman, woman to woman, who wants to, this is only want to do with being a Black man. Well, with so many, hundreds of thousands of women, over and above the number of available men, there's going to be a lot of bed hopping going on. And each time one of these guys sleeps with you and then sleeps with some other woman after he's been in prison, the opportunities for him to be spreading HIV amongst 3, 4, 10 women is quite high. You guys got to think. Don't just think about what's happening right now and the relationship that you're in right now. Look at his behavior and the possibilities for bullshit. It's like, look at this slide here. It's like the white women, Black women are getting HIV at 20 times the rate of white women. 20 times? That can't possibly be a coincidence. And plus we're the largest share of women that live with the HIV, at least as of 2010, which is where I got these statistics from. Ladies, there's got to be some other way to meet a dude. This video series, it's going to be 3 videos. This is the second one. Is delving into the mindset of so many women that they want to date a convict or an ex-convict and bring these dudes from prison into their house. I don't get that. It's like you can't really know a man, and he's not necessarily going to tell you the truth about what he's doing. Like I said in video number 1 of the Jailbird series, they have a vested interest in manipulating you. They want you to do certain things for them and be there for them in a certain way. So they have to create an illusion in your mind of how they really are. So they don't want to tell you that they got raped. They don't even really report it to the COs, and the authorities because they're afraid. Because if you are viewed as a snitch, your life could be at risk depending upon who assaulted you. For the guys, even the tough dudes, they're all buff and everything, and you would think, well, nobody's really going to mess with him because he can fight. Well, what they're going to do is they're going to get 4, 5, 6 dudes to hold him down. And he can fight all he wants to, but there's no, you got 4, 5, 6 big buff ass niggas as big as buff as you holding you down. What you going to do? So, and then you got like the young kids, more and more teenagers and youths are being sentenced as adults. So they're going right into these prisons with adult men, lifers, people there for 20 years for murder and all this kind of stuff. And they're, 17 and 18 years old. They're babies. And what do you think is happening to them? Like I said, the young, the weak, the vulnerable are the ones who get assaulted. And, or they think, you think that you're too good. They'll do it too because they want to bring you down a peg if you try to act snooty. As you see here, vaginal sex is more risky for women than it is for men, and anal sex is the riskiest of all, especially for women. So, if you got a guy who's been doing anal sex with dudes, and of course they're in prison, right? They don't have condoms. They don't have anything. I mean, I guess they could try to, make a one off of a rubber glove or some saran wrap or something if they can get a hold of it. But as far as prisons giving prisoners condoms, they don't do it because they're not supposed to be having sex. They feel like that's, condoning the sexual activity, when in reality, what it's doing is keeping people who are getting assaulted from, from catching this horrible disease that they can't get rid of. So, at least people go into prison and they're fine and they get assaulted a time or two or three, and then the next thing you know, they have HIV. Some of the guys were saying, as I was reading some comments, that their sexual interaction wasn't always with an inmate. A lot of them are assaulted by the guards. The guards, will make them do stuff to them, sexual favors, just so they can get food or, exercise or a shower. The guards hold that over their head so the guys can't get it unless they do what the guard wants them to do. It's just a nasty business. Prison is no joke. And we'll be talking about the mental and emotional toll it takes on these men and how it plays out in a relationship with you in the next video, which will be up tomorrow. But right now, we're talking about male victimization in prison, sexual activity, whether it's by consent or coercion or force, and the end result of those actions and how they affect women on the outside once these guys get out. And a lot of women are like, well, he would have told me if he got raped. No, he wouldn't. I don't really think most of the men who have been assaulted in such a way would ever tell you, but what they will do is they'll be depressed. They'll start drinking. They'll do drugs. They'll try to find any kind of avenue of escape that they can to away from those horrible thoughts of what happened to him. Because a guy feels like if he got raped like that, his manhood has been taken away from him. He doesn't feel like he's a man anymore. So you see a lot of these dudes, they just go on and switch up. They start wearing dresses and wigs and makeup and whatnot. And others, they just become this guy's, boy or girl or kid or whatever phrase you want to put it. But it's like his sex slave. And, if he owes somebody a favor, then he'll, trade you for the favor. If he doesn't have the money to pay the person, he's going to send you over there. So you get traded. Your body gets traded to another convict on behalf of the man that, you've aligned yourself with, just so you can stay alive and make it out of prison. And that's how desperate these guys are. That's how anxious they are to survive so they can get out, back outside and try to pick their life up where they left off. And this, the story here, this guy was like, inmates hung themselves after being assaulted because they couldn't stand it. They just didn't feel like they could ever get over it. And when I see stuff like that too, as an aside, it's really interesting because, they don't have no kind of sympathy like that for women, right? If we get assaulted, but what were you wearing? Well, why were you there? Well, why were you drinking? Oh, but if it happened to them, they have to kill themselves because their manhood is gone. So, I don't know. I just, it's something to consider, and I'm not saying everybody who is involved in this kind of stuff has gotten raped. Remember that. Some of the guys do this willingly. They may be coerced to do it. Others are, they already kind of like that the thought of it, and this just gives them an opportunity to try it. That's what that's about. But others, they weigh the odds of getting their ass beat all the time, ending up in a medical facility. And then they get out, they're still not 100% healed, and they get beat up again because so they finally just get tired and they just say, okay, whatever, just do it, and let's just call it a day. He's still pressured into doing something he didn't really want to do, and but the end result is your man is going to come out of prison and back to you, back to your kids, having lived this secret undercover lifestyle while he was in prison, and he's going to bring the repercussions of that behavior back home to you. You've got to, ladies, you have to do more to protect yourself. With the primary age group of men being involved in this, in the 25 to about 40 age group, that is when men are in their sexual prime. Please believe me that there's going to be something jumping off at some point, even if he's just sitting up there jacking off with another dude or whatever, something oral, something anal. We're not going to really know what they're doing. All we're going to know is that it happened. He came home with the disease, and the person who's going to be suffering the repercussions of it are going to be you, because you didn't really have a choice in that. You were just loving your man, and then this is what happened. So, get tested, make him get tested, see your doctor. If you get meds for your HIV, if you've already had it, take your medications and stay healthy. All right? My name is Deborrah Cooper from survivingdating.com. This is the video number 2 in the series on men in prison and their relationships with black women. I'll see you tomorrow with part number 3. Thank you for listening.